A very warm welcome to CEO Peter Hutton.
Thank you,
Peter.
Und Entschuldigung, ich spreche nur ein bisschen Deutsch. Ja?
Okay, but you understand what we discussed?
Yeah.
Okay. Peter, it's a great honor to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Your previous stations in your career: COO 10 Sports in Asia, Senior Vice President Fox Sports, Managing Director ESPN in the Americas, and now CEO Eurosports. So, welcome back to Europe, Mr. Hutton.
It's nice my world tour has brought me home at last.
What's the difference to work in the sports business in Europe compared with the other continents, Asia or the Americas?
I think the main thing is I can go back on weekends and watch my football club in England.
which is what?
Derby County.
Derby County, okay. So that's the main difference, or are there others?
No, I think the key thing about the sports business everywhere is that, first of all, we're very lucky to be in it. And I think as a sports fan, there's no better thing to be doing. And broadcasting sports and dealing in sports is really the same the world over, because you look for people that share your passion for sport and you look to give them what they want. And I think as long as you keep that at the heart of what you offer, then you're in the right place. It's not such a complicated business.
Ah, okay. 11 months ago, you started as new CEO. In your opinion, what are the 3 most crucial things you have changed in the meantime?
I think it's a very interesting journey to turn around a company like Eurosport. You know, I think if we speak for most people in the room, and that they've grown up with Eurosport. You know, it's been there for 25, 30 years as part of the way that you see sport on TV. And we're trying to make Eurosport a very different experience. And that clearly takes time. And I think it's a real challenge and a real opportunity. But I think if you look at what we've tried to do, we've tried to give it more personality. We've tried to take it in an area where I think it needs to be, which is bigger sports events done properly. More production, more on-site presence, more personality about what it does. And I think if we can do all those things, then we're taking it in the right place.
You won't be surprised. I want to talk with you about the biggest bang you experienced so far in your new job. Eurosport has acquired the media rights of the Olympic Games for the Olympiad 2018 to 2024. A lot of market players were very surprised about this decision by the IOC. You as well?
It was surprising how quick it went.
Yeah.
Because you are used to these deals as well. Sometimes these things drag out for months and months. You know, really it felt like we put a bid in, within a week the deal was done, and then we had to deal with everything.
Yeah.
And that was great, because it made it more fun and it kept the excitement of the deal alive. And I think it was a huge step by the IOC, but it was also a huge sign that they believed in the Discovery message. And Eurosport, obviously now part of the wider Discovery group, in that we went very clearly to the IOC and said, we want to treat the Olympics with respect, respect its traditions, respect the free-to-air broadcasters that it has worked with around Europe, but we also want to take it to new audiences, treat it in a different way, make more of it available to more people. And the good news is you have an exclusive today, because we just signed a deal with the BBC 6 minutes ago. So our first Olympic sub-license is done with a traditional free-to-air broadcaster.
One of the main markets?
Absolutely, which is great. So great to start with a big deal. Great to start in a way that is clearly a partnership, in that the BBC had the rights to 2018 and 2020.
Exactly.
They've sub-licensed some of those rights to us. We have sub-licensed some of our rights to them for 22 and 24. So we have the first deal done, and a great sign that we can work with public broadcasters, try and maximize the visibility of the games, and respect the tradition and the heritage that the Olympics shows.
So you have closed this deal actually today?
The deal is just announced.
That's what I call professional, to come to the SpoBiS and have this great news. Congratulations.
I like to have something to say, right?
It's good organized. Coming back to the decision by the IOC, I would like to ask you, which benefit does Eurosport deliver to the IOC? What was the reason that you got the chance to acquire these top rights, which wasn't the case before?
I think, first of all, we told them a story, and I think a story that we have to deliver on, that the IOC agreed with, in that we said, our challenge as Eurosport is very similar to the challenge of the IOC. We want to widen our audience. We want to go to a younger audience. We want to look after a major sports right in a way that deals with the reality of how an audience will now be experiencing that right, which means it has to be multi-screen. It has to be every single minute of the Olympics available to every single person. And I think that went straight to what Thomas Bach is trying to do and his work with projects like the Olympic Channel, where he's looking to widen the appeal of the Olympics, looking to build on its real legacy, and have something that lives a legacy for Thomas Bach in terms of his legacy to the Olympic movement.
Coming back to the Olympic Channel later, did the EBU, the European Broadcasting Union, or maybe ARD ZDF here in Germany, did they make a mistake? Did they probably underestimated Eurosport Discovery?
I don't think it's a mistake as much as I think Eurosport has changed, and I don't think people realized how fast it has changed. And that gave us an opportunity. But that certainly doesn't position us as being always in opposition with the EBU or the EBU members, such as ARD ZDF. You know, since the Olympic deal, we've done a succession of deals where we work in partnership with them. And I think that's important. You know, I think when you're a sports fan, it's very important to make sure that sport is not taken away from the widest possible audience. And while you can have different ways of experiencing that sport, from digital content to free-to-air content to paid content, I think you have to respect the ladder, the way that you want your children to go and find out about new sports and then get deeper involved in them and then give them everything they could possibly want about that sport. Because that's the reality of how we take media today. In that if you love a sport, love a team, you want every single piece of information about that team. And I think that's the route that we're trying to offer, to say, if you want to be completely immersed in a sport, we will give you the opportunity to be immersed in that sport.
You're paying 1.3 billion euro, more or less, which is pretty much the same price level what Sport 5 and the big public channels in Europe paid in the past. But we're talking about Olympic Games in the Asian time zone, 3 in a row, which is not as attractive for the European viewers, for example. How risky is that acquisition for Eurosport?
I think we're actually very comfortable with it, and which is good, because otherwise I'd be very nervous about a number like that. And I think we're comfortable with it because the Olympics has a premium value. And you know yourself from the experience of the sports rights world, it's the big rights that go up and up in value because you want more and more of quality, and increasingly you want less and less of the rest. And I think that also sums up Eurosport. You know, Eurosport was a bulk product. It was about thousands of hours of live content. Whereas now we're trying to say, look, we're far more about giving a better experience around the premium content. And if you take that as a philosophy, then to look at the numbers on the Olympics was something we were very comfortable with. And I think certainly the negotiations that we've had post-Olympics have backed us up, which is a nice place to be in, because then you can really say, we need to also not just spend that 1.3, but we need to spend heavily on production, on promotion and marketing to try and make it a bigger event than it's ever been before. And that's our promise to the IOC.
I've read in an interview that you want to reinvest up to 70% of your investment through sub-licenses to free-to-air channels in Europe. First, is that correct? And secondly, what kind of packages do you offer to broadcasters, such as the BBC, you made this deal this morning, or ARD ZDF here in Germany? What kind of program?
I think that to answer your first question, it's almost true.
Okay, it's almost.
You know, I think maybe 70% of the Olympic value is in free-to-air. But of course, Discovery has plenty of free-to-air channels of its own. So it's not necessarily a sub-license to somebody else. It may be kept on our own channels. And particularly in the Scandinavian markets, for example, you know, we have very strong free-to-air businesses there, where we certainly want to show the Olympics live on those free-to-air channels. And what was the second part of the question?
The second was, what kind of program, what amount of program do you offer to ARD ZDF for the German market?
I think it's an interesting question, and I think, you know, also we have to say it's not just about offering to ARD ZDF, it's offering to all the free-to-air broadcasters in Germany and allowing everyone to have a chance to see if they can get involved in the rights. The key thing, I think, is not saying these are the hard rules, but to say our philosophy is we want everything available in the best possible way. And clearly we are guided by the rules that the Olympics give us, where the IOC says 200 hours of every summer games must be available free to air.
100 in the winter.
100 for the winter. So you have some basic rules to start with. The basic rules also say the best moments in a country must be available on free to air. So we have to respect that too. And then we go into a discussion, and then we see what is the best way of doing it, because I don't necessarily want to be in the old Eurosport way of having exactly the same picture on one broadcaster and exactly the same picture on Eurosport. The idea is to offer something complementary, and we need to work out the rules to do that best.
So I understand you correct that you want to secure part of the exclusivity for Eurosport on the German market.
I think inevitably we will have a part of the exclusivity because we have more channels, because we can offer everything on our player service, because we can offer everything on our existing channels and maybe on the Discovery channels as well. So we have room to offer more. That doesn't necessarily mean taking what you would normally expect from a free-to-air broadcaster away from free-to-air broadcasters.
And do you expect other substantial bids besides ARD, ZDF from German media companies?
Look, we know there's plenty of interest. And I think, again, we move away from a number to say, what is the best partnership for us? One of the things about the BBC deal that we've just done is that we have 30 years as Discovery of working with the BBC, of joint ventures on things like Animal Planet, on working in cooperation around the world. And what I like about the Olympics as a person who runs a channel is it opens up all sorts of doors. And this is not particularly talking about Germany, but for example, in some markets where broadcasters will struggle to pay a big rights fee, we can say, okay, well, what rights can you offer us? What do you have already under your umbrella that maybe could go onto Eurosport in your market? So you have to look at it in a way that is more, okay, what's the deal that works best in any individual market? And that's clearly a negotiation. And the good thing about ARD and ZDF is that they have that commercial savvy. They have the knowledge in the business. And I think we can have a good, sensible negotiation with them.
I mean, it was published that you had already initial negotiations with ARD and ZDF. How did it go?
Yeah, it's going okay.
Going okay. Without results so far, of course.
Not yet. Look, the BBC is the first one done.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that also, as you know, these things will take time. It's taken time to finish all the paperwork with the IOC even. So there's no hurry. I think in German the phrase is Eile macht Weile. So we will get there, right?
But we have to have in mind that the next Winter Games in 2018, that you don't have too much time, right? So.
No, look, the negotiations are on,
Yeah.
and they're on in all sorts of markets across Europe. And some will happen fast, and some will happen slow, and all will happen in the end.
Regarding the Olympic channel, you mentioned the IOC Olympic channel, a huge, ambitious media project by the IOC will be launched in 1 year. From your perspective, is it part of your cooperation with the IOC, or is it more an opponent in the future for Eurosport?
No, I think it's definitely part of the cooperation, and it's certainly part of our agreement with the IOC. And one of the great things about the Olympic channel in this very small world of the sports business is it's absolutely full of people who used to work for Eurosport. So as a result, we have lots of friends there, and I think we can have a good working relationship with them. And I think the model behind it is a very interesting one, which is how do you keep Olympic sports alive year-round? How do you make sure that the Olympic stories are told year-round? And I think we can contribute to that, be part of it, not just as Eurosport, but also the rest of the Discovery channels. You know, whether it be technology stories or whether it be women's stories on TLC or whether it be men's stories on channels like DMAX. You know, I think we can work with the Olympics to tell more of those Olympic stories. You know, the Olympics is unique in that you can make someone a national hero for 2 weeks and then they disappear completely. So you know there's more room there to build up the story and more room to carry on the story.
Finally, it's a question how you can fulfill the gap between the games. That's the question for the Olympic channel as well, and for Eurosport, of course.
Look, Eurosport's got a massive advantage in that, and I can't take credit for it because it was there before I came, which is they have a huge amount of Olympic-related events every year. You know, virtually everything on the winter sports calendar is on Eurosport. Every major athletics event's on Eurosport. Every major swimming event's on Eurosport. So it allows you to follow those individuals on a year-round basis. And I think, you know, a lot has been made of Discovery going in and signing this newer deal with the Olympics. But the reality is that the relationship with the IOC has been built by 25 years of Olympic sports being covered on Eurosport, and that relationship and that trust being built up.
Peter, I would like to discuss with you something about the general strategy for the future. It came to my ear that you will broadcast tennis, specifically on the Belgium territory. I've heard from Werner Staats that you have acquired the Formula One rights for Portugal. So my question is it technically possible to create more national programs on the Eurosport platform?
I have to say my technicians are probably the people who like me least in the building. But increasingly, we're doing more and more single territory feeds. And I think that's important because I think as Eurosport, as countries became more ambitious in their sports rights, Eurosport ran the risk of becoming marginalized and only showing the lowest common denominator that nobody really wanted. So we have to go after the big sports events, which inevitably means going on a more country-by-country basis. So you see MotoGP in Germany. You don't see it in every market we have it. You see FA Cup in Germany. Again, we acquired it for Germany specifically. Even the Rugby World Cup we acquired for Germany specifically. We now have, in one of our markets, every major football league, from Champions League, Europa League, Serie A, Ligue 1, Premier League, Bundesliga in 22 markets. We have Formula One, we have MotoGP, we have all 4 Grand Slams. And that's only possible by thinking, okay, how do we take a more market-by-market approach and genuinely have the jewels of the sporting year on our channel? And, you know, again, you asked the question, what changes? That's a big change.
Yeah, it is. What is your ideal imagination for the future of Eurosport? To strengthen Eurosport as a pan-European sports channel #1, or to create more national programs?
I think it's a clear combination of the two, because as a business, the economy of scale that Eurosport offers as a pan-European and pan-Asian service is a really good business model. I think also that offers a lot to the federations. You know, we were with the FIS in Switzerland last week, and they were saying how great it was that we show all their events in Asia, where otherwise they wouldn't have an audience. But I think the reality is you also need a national personality. You need more of a face to the channel. You need identification with the biggest stars of that country. And to do that, you have to then focus your efforts on creating a truly national vision of what sports matter. If you show the FA Cup in Germany, it has to be about Jurgen Klopp and can he keep Liverpool in next week? You know, you need to create that local story, and that will maximize our viewership and therefore benefits back to subscribers or advertisers.
Let's have a deeper look on the German market, please. We are expecting a little tender the next weeks. It's called Bundesliga.
Yeah.
Probably you've heard about that. I mean, Eurosport is already DFL partner in, I guess, 22 territories in Scandinavia and some of the Eastern European territories. Could you imagine to acquire German rights as well?
I can always imagine. I have a very good imagination.
Okay. You're full of fantasy.
And look, we'll look at it, right? I mean, you know, it would be a very big bet for us to try and bring the Bundesliga rights back in Germany, and I think a bet that is unlikely. But we'll look at the terms, look at how the tender is framed, particularly look as if there's one single buyer rule, because I think that will change many of the rules. Yeah. So certainly we'll have a good close look, and then we'll do our own analysis, and if it works for us as a business, then why not?
If the DFL would be obliged to accept this no single buyer rule, would that remain an advantage for other channels to step in to get a little piece of the Bundesliga cake?
Yeah, absolutely.
You think so?
Look, and I think, you know, some of my colleagues might disagree, but I think it will be a good thing if there's a no single buyer rule, because I don't think any industry wants to be totally reliant on one customer. And therefore, to encourage multiple people into the market is a good thing.
What about other German leagues? Hockey was sold last week to Deutsche Telekom, but handball will be available soon. You probably heard that handball is quite popular in Germany at the moment.
Yeah, genau. Look, I'm not going to say I'm going to go for this, I'm going to go for that.
Of course.
Clearly,
but in general, German leagues would be interesting for Eurosport as well.
Absolutely. You know, and I think, you know, that it would be wrong to rule ourselves out of it, but at the same time, to look at the economics of each decision as it comes around. And you know, clearly, if we want a German national identity to be present on the Eurosport channel, then we need German sports stars at the forefront of what we do.
Apart from these rights, how do you want to give Eurosport more importance and relevance within particular markets? What's your strategy for that?
Look, I think there's lots of things that we're also getting rid of on the channel. And it's very easy to make big announcements and say, we've bought this and we've bought that. But we also need to think about what's wrong about what's been on Eurosport. So this year, for example, you'll see no more Rolex Wednesday Selection, which has been on the channel for years and years. From back when I had hair, it was on the channel. But Rolex Wednesday Selection was all about showing content that was 3 or 4 days old, even 10 days old sometimes. And that's not where we should be as a sports channel. We should either be live, same day, or absolutely classic. And I think that, as a philosophy, therefore determines your schedule as a whole.
We've heard something about the future from Peter Jäger from Microsoft. Do you have a vision in mind what Eurosport is in 2020?
Yeah, I think, look, it was fascinating to hear the Microsoft view of the future. And I think, again, no one's really clear where we're going. But I look at a business like our Eurosport Player, where we're going direct to consumer, and the number of subscribers in Germany seems to increase month on month. Clearly, that is part of our future. And to be able to offer an event like the Australian Open, not just on free-to-air TV, with incredible results for the viewing figures, but also to have all 16 courts available on the Player, that's clearly part of our future. You know, and we want to build a better relationship between a sports fan and event, offer them more from the event. So therefore, multiple feeds, multiple layers of contact means a heavily digital future, and that's something that we know we need to invest in.
Peter, thank you very much for the interesting interview. Thanks for being with us. Good luck for the negotiations in Germany for the Olympic rights, and good luck for Derby County.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Thank you.